Hello, brethren. Our study today is entitled Adventist Church Tops 20 Million Members. Here we see a picture of some of the baptisms that took place, and we're told by our SDA church that this is a great thing, that the church has grown in the last 10, 20 years, and that it's the work of the Lord. But tonight we're going to go into a special presentation here about this situation, and we want to look at what the Elijah message says about the church situation in the last days. And I think once we look at the whole picture, we're going to come away with a more of a Lord's point of view as opposed to a human point of view about this church. And so we want to put the presentation on tonight and ask that you do the standard request, that you pray to be guided into all truth, John 16:13, and he will be faithful to do so. Here is something that was found on the Office of Archives, Statistics, and Research. The Adventist Church has 20,008,779 members as of December 31st, 2016, a net increase of 800,082 people, or 4.6% from the previous year. The church's Office of Archives, Statistics, and Research said. In another milestone, a record 1.2 million people were baptized last year, including unprecedented 110,000 in Rwanda, while new churches continued to be planted at a rapid rate. This was from David Trim, director of the Office of Archives, Statistics, Research, and SDA organization. So here we see back a few years ago, our church passed the 20 million mark. So as a SDA member, particularly when I was first coming into the church, I would have looked at this as a praise the Lord, wonderful. All these souls coming into the truth, and they're ready for being whisked away to heaven. But, brethren, we got to take a look at this presentation, and you're going to see it hopefully in a different light about how the Lord looks at this situation. We see another picture here of a worldwide missionary effort and bringing many into the SDA church and giving their presentations. And we see this on a regular basis. We see this from Amazing Facts doing their ministries. We see this from Walter Veith. We see this from Stephen Bohr, Stephen Wohlberg, Mark Finley. The list goes on and on, brethren, of missionary outreaches to reach the world, to bring in more into our SDA church. Here's a timely quote, and it's found at Counsels to Writers and Editors, page 33. We must not think, well, we have all the truth, we understand the main pillars of our faith, and we may rest on this knowledge. The truth is an advancing truth, and we must walk in the increasing light. So, one of the things that I became so aware of when I became aware of this Elijah message is I look back upon this statement and say, wow, this is so true. It's important for us to keep on with advancing truth. We come into the message, yes, through the SDA faith. We learn the commandments. We learn the basics of our walk. But we don't stop there. It's like a stair step. We got to continue to walk up that stair step to heaven. And we get closer and closer to God as we do that. So let us ask us the following questions. Why didn't the Lord promise to bring Noah? Why didn't he promise to bring Noah? That's the question. In other words, why wasn't Elijah promised before the great and dreadful day, and not somebody like Noah, or David, or Joseph, or any one of the old time prophets. Why did he pick Elijah? Here we see a picture of Noah, and back in the days where he was guiding the animals into that fateful ship to save what the Lord would save. And so Noah preached to the world. We know that was a message that is going out in the church right now, is that we need to have peace and safety. That's one of the things that we know that Noah did not bring to the world. He did not bring a peace and safety message. He brought a message of destruction. And but the key difference between Noah and Elijah is that Elijah's message was to his own people. Let's not forget that, brethren. Elijah's message was to his own people. Noah's message was to the world. So we can see a big difference here. That's why the Lord did not bring Noah, antitypical Noah, back to give a message, because he knew that the church, our own people, his own remnant church right now, needs a message given to it. And that's why Elijah's message was the message of today. Okay, so let's go on to the first Elijah message report, and that can be found in the following. Well, let's go back here for a second. Before we go there, I want to touch on these judgments here on a mass scale. So, number one is Noah, we know, preached the message of warning, and that was 8 people saved out of millions. Then we know Lot preached a message of warning, and 3 people were saved from 2 large cities. Now, we don't know how many thousands were there, but some say it was over 100, 200,000 of those 2 large cities. And then we have the third example of a mass-scale judgment, and that was Exodus, where 2 people, over 20, out of close to 1 million, were saved. So the SDA church is prophesied to have 144,000 saved out of 20 million. So when we see the Lord's prior mass-scale judgments, are we amazed? Are we surprised? I don't think so, brethren. We have to look at his prior mass-scale judgments. And we can see this fits right in with the prior mass-scale judgments. Unfortunately, there's few that come aboard his ark of safety. And today that is the present truth message of Elijah. So if you're an SDA member, we've got to come into the ark of safety. And the Lord tells us in Malachi 4, verse 5, that Elijah message is our ark of safety. Okay, so the first message that we find, the first reference that we find, is a question that was asked to Brother Victor Hodoff in the Answerer. And this can be found in question number 32. And let's see. This is found in volume 2, question 32. And it reads, work within or without? On the one hand, I find your literature teaching its believers not to leave the ranks of the mother church, while on the other hand, I find it causing no end of trouble to the church. How do you reconcile your precept with your example? Why not devote your time to evangelistic efforts, bringing erring souls to the knowledge of the truth, and let the church alone? The answer was given. Assuredly, we do believe that this is no time to be pulling apart, but indeed to be pressing together. And the message which we are bearing to the church not only does not contain any doctrine or teaching which would warrant our leaving her ranks to become a separate cult, but does, on the contrary, absolutely forbid her doing so. For these reasons, we have from the beginning steadfastly refused, even in the face of abusive treatment, to leave the mother church. So far as we are concerned, therefore, existing controversy and schism is the responsibility of the denomination's leading brethren and none of ours, for we are only carrying out the Lord's express precept and example never to sacrifice truth, and they themselves admit that we should obey God rather than man. Upon them, therefore, rests the heavy guilt of repeating the tragic folly of the Jews in Christ's time by rejecting the message of the hour, entering not in themselves into the expansion of truth, hindering those who would enter in, casting out those who do enter in. So, to devote our time to evangelizing the world while neglecting the church would be a criminal act, one of the highest treason both to God and to his people. The church must first be saved from her Laodicean condition of being wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. She, not the world, is just about to be spewed out. She, quote, is the only object on earth on which he bestows his supreme regard. Testimonies to Ministers, page 15. But in her present deplorable state of blindness and destitution, as exposed by the true witness, Revelation 13, 14 to 18, she is utterly unfit for the task assigned her, and must be rescued from her sad deception before she can become a safe refuge and saving influence to those who would join her ranks. Should God leave her in the Laodicean condition in which she now languishes, not only would she be herself lost, but, in consequence, so also would the whole world along with her. He must therefore rouse her up, or else raise up another to do the work which remains to be done. Think, though, what an eternal joy it would be for him to fit her up, and to use her to his glory, rather than to forsake her. So before raising up another as a last resort, he is trying to save her, and he will save her as he promised. Quote, Satan will work his miracles to deceive. He will set up his power as supreme. The church may appear as to about to fall, but it does not fall. It remains, while the sinners in Zion will be sifted out, the chaff separated from the precious wheat. This is a terrible ordeal, but nevertheless it must take place. End of quote. And then he has another quote. The great issue so near at hand will weed out those whom God has not appointed. He will have a pure, true, sanctified ministry prepared for the latter rain. And this is found in Series B, 55, 1886. This is the continuation of the answer. Were the Lord, who himself, when upon earth, spent all his time in exclusive endeavor to save his lost church then, to send us to the world rather than his church today, he would not only be bringing in the innocent to perish with the guilty, but would also be completely reversing his own practice and contradicting his own orders to his apostles that they preach present truth to the church first. Matthew 10, verses 5 and 6. In mercy and in consistency with his eternal procedure, therefore, he proposed that while the investigative judgment is going forward in heaven, while the sins of the penitent believers are being removed from the sanctuary, there is to be a special work of purification, of putting away of sin among his people upon earth. This is her special work. Quote, Then the church which, at his coming, he is to receive to himself, will be glorious church, not having spot, wrinkle, or any such thing. Great Controversy, page 425. And then we have another quote. The Lord does not now work to bring many souls into the truth. Furthermore, says the Spirit of Truth, because of the church members who have never been converted, those who were once converted, but who have backslid, what influence would these unconsecrated members have on new converts? Would they not make of no effect the God-given message which his people are to bear? Testimonies, volume 6, page 371. But when the backslidden and unconverted, the tares, are taken away, then shall she look forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and as terrible as army with banners. Great Controversy, page 425. Yes, the honest must and will be evangelized, but the lost sheep of the house of Israel, Matthew 10:6, must be sought first. How thankful, therefore, and how cooperative they ought to be, and will be, when they discover that rather than being rich and increased with goods and in need of nothing, they are actually wretched, miserable, and poor, blind, and naked, in need of everything, and that the Lord is waiting for them to wake up to the fact so that he can make them what they ought to be. For these reasons, God says now to work within the Laodicean congregation rather than without, and what he says, that what he means. And we dare not disobey, regardless what men may say or do. Again, that's found in Answer, Volume 2, Question 32. Now we had recently just quoted that quote there, so we're going to go ahead and post this so you can. Wait a minute. Excuse me. This is a different quote, and we're going to look at this. Only when the church is composed of pure, unselfish members can it fulfill God's purpose. Too much hasty work is done in adding names to the church roll. Serious defects are seen in the characters of some who join the church. Those who admit them say, we will first get them into the church and then reform them. But this is a mistake. The very first work to be done is work of reform. Pray with them, talk with them, but do not allow them to unite with God's people in church relations until they give decided evidence that the Spirit of God is working on their hearts. Review and Herald, May 21st, 1901. Very, very powerful, brethren, that the Lord tells us that the work of bringing people into the church is not to be hasty. And unfortunately, like we see in those pictures above and prior, there is much hasty work done, thinking that we'll convert them later without getting to know them first. This is the Lord's way of bringing the members in the church. Are we doing this? No. Okay, so then we have another quote from the message that is very, very specific to our topic tonight. And that is, save the church or the world. So an SDA member had wrote to Brother Honoff, I believe back in the 30s. And this question was, if at this late hour we give our whole effort for the salvation of the church, how will the rest of the world ever be reached? Let me find that for us, brethren. I'll be right there. The mission to save the world cannot be more important than the mission to save the church. Enlarging the church membership under the now prevailing lukewarm Laodicean conditions, could no more advance the kingdom of Christ than could have been done under the condition in the Jewish church in the days of his first advent. Understanding the true situation in the church, John the Baptist and Christ himself, and even the apostles at first, engaged themselves to work, not for the world in general, but only in the interest of their brethren in the church. As the same departure from Christ exists within the church now as it did then, Testimonies, Volume 5, page 217, it will take much greater effort to rescue the people from Laodicean sad deception, Testimonies, Volume 3, page 253, than if they were in heathenism, for in Laodicea they are made to believe that they have all the truth there is to be had, that they are rich, increased with goods, and need of nothing, their salvation forever secure, as long as they hold membership in the church. Hence, there is greater risk of their losing their souls in the church while she is lukewarm and about to be spewed out, than if they remain in the world in the church until the church awakes from her slumber and anoints herself with salve truth, sees right, does right, and leads and feeds the flock aright. Let every honest member ask the question, if the church herself is not saved, Testimonies, Volume 3, page 253, not following Christ her leader, Testimonies, Volume 5, page 217, and has become a harlot, Testimonies, Volume 8, page 250, how can she save others? The greatest need, therefore, is first to save those in the church, then those in the world. The special work of purification, of putting away sin amongst God's people, Great Controversy, page 425, the closing work for the church in the sealing time of the 144,000, Testimonies, Volume 3, page 266, must come first, then is to follow the sealing of those in the world. The men and means already devoted to missionary work for the world are so plenteous as entirely to overshadow the meager facilities available for carrying the message to the Laodiceans, although the church is in even greater need than the world. However, carrying the message to the church does not affect the mission work for the world, for while Davidians labor in the interests of the church, the denomination carries the old message to the world. But should the Davidians also devote their time and money to looking after the interests of the heathen, then both the church and the world would be plunged into hell. Consequently, to save the world, we must first seek to save the church from the ruin that is imminent, as did John the Baptist, Christ, and the apostles in their day. After the church awakes and ceases dreaming that she is rich, increased with goods, finds out that she is in need of everything rather than nothing, puts on her strength by turning to Christ her leader, clothes herself in garments of his righteousness, and lets unclean pass no more through her, Isaiah 52:1, then shall her righteousness go forth as the brightness, and her salvation as a lamp that burneth. And the Gentiles shall see her righteousness, and all her kings her glory, Isaiah 62:1 and 2. Then she shall really be able to save. Then her gates shall be continually open. They shall not be shut day or night. Then men may bring into her forces of the Gentiles, and their kings may be brought. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve her shall perish. Yes, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Isaiah 60, verse 11 and 12. Let all present true believers, therefore, pursue this course to its happy climax. Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for lo, I come,
and I will dwell in the midst of thee, saith the Lord. And many nations shall be joined to the Lord in that day, and shall be my people, and I will dwell in the midst of thee, and thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts has sent me unto thee. Zechariah 2, verse 10 and 11. Still further, as it is not we, but Christ, who is taking the reins in his own hands, Testimonies, page 300, it is not our duty to tell him which work should be done and which should be left undone, but let every follower of his realize that he will work in a manner very much out of common order of things, in a way that will be contrary to any human planning. Testimonies to Ministers, page 300. Be not like the class who question and criticize everything that rises in the unfolding of truth. Testimonies, volume 5, page 690. But be like those who let heaven guide. Testimonies to Ministers, page 475. The command is to us, cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins. Isaiah 58:1. Go through the gates, prepare ye the way, cast up the highway, gather out the stones, lift up a standard for the people. Behold, the Lord hath proclaimed unto the end of the world. Say ye to the daughter of Zion, behold, thy salvation cometh. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. Isaiah 62:10 and 11. So in closing, brethren, I want us to know that don't be confused that the message of Elijah does not necessarily eliminate any new members to coming into the church, because we know that there are a few, like the Syrophoenician woman, Mark 7, verse 25 to 29, come into the faith with a burning desire to know truth, and to those we cannot turn away, for the Lord has put his spirit upon them to know the truth. And therefore, we have to be very careful that we don't wholesale eliminate new members to the church, that we understand that the Lord will bring some, but not many, because like we just learned, the SDA ship is heading towards the Titanic, as it were, the Titanic icebergs, and it's about to crash. So at this time, it's not our job to be loading more onto the ship. In fact, we've got to be warning on this ship that it's about to sink, and we need to put the life jackets on, get into the lifeboats. And how do we do that? By learning and obeying his Elijah message. This is the only answer for us, brethren. This is a message of warning, so we need to take heed. So we hope you've been blessed tonight, and thank you for listening. And when God gives us another important message to post, we will surely do that. Until next time, God bless.